John.
Welcome everyone. I am Sam Tully-Kelly. I'm the executive director here. I see some new faces and some familiar faces. I would love to know how we're all connecting, especially the new faces. But I'll just give you, this speaker series. This is the second speaker, Mariama Jones. She's coming from the Fairbanks Museum, and this speaker series is a response to Stardust, and I don't know if all of you have seen Stardust, the installations that are in both rooms. Essentially, 3 artists got together and over many conversations came to the inquiry of where are we going, where do we come from, who are we? And in response to that, they're called MAD 802 Arts Collective. The 3 of them interpreted those questions artistically. So you have the tetradecagon of John's drawings. John is in the back there. He's one of the founders of our collective. And there you will see the scale of the inquiry on a cosmic level, and then on a earth plane figurative level. I come in and I did this figure and the pieces in the windows. And then Julie Parker is here. She's the 3rd founding member, and she did this quantum room. You're gonna have to come back. If you haven't seen the installation, you're gonna have to come back. You have until the 31st. Tuesday to Saturdays, 1 to 5. You got to see this quantum room because it's an immersive, it really is an immersive experience. And that's what we do here. We produce exhibition experiences, and those are also invitations for conversation and creating memories and building community. And that is our purpose here in the Valley, to create that kind of social cohesion, foundation for the arts to thrive. So I'm going to introduce the president of our board.
I'm going to speak afterwards, actually.
Okay.
But thank you.
Okay. I'll just tell you a little bit about our programming. We run all year long. So you want to check in on us, look at our calendar online, madrivervalleyarts.org. We have events that are usually in satellite situations. So we run garden tours, art tours. We run the Green Mountain Photo Show every year in September through October in the LaRue Farm, the barn. I don't know if all of you are coming to know of the valley at all, but American Flatbread over there on the outskirts of Waitsfield is the original American Flatbread. So you must come to our shows. We really appreciate art lovers, art enthusiasts. It really makes a difference to producing culture and keeping the arts alive. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Mariama Jones. She's coming from the Fairbanks Museum and the Planetarium. She's an anthropologist and the science educator there.
Yeah.
Right? She's sharing stories about the skies.
Right.
And I'm going to run your presentation.
Thank you. So sorry. There's so many slides. I apologize in advance. Hi, everybody. It's really nice to see you all. My name is Mariama Jones. I go by Amma. I teach small children. Mariama is really difficult for smalls to say, so they just call me Miss Amma, and that's fine. So I, as Sam said, work at the Fairbanks Museum and Planetarium. My background is in environmental science and anthropology. So this is kind of an offshoot of that. When I got to the museum, they were like, hey, we have a planetarium, do you want to be in it? And I was like, that sounds really cool, but what would I do? And they helped me develop this program where I teach people about archaeoastronomy, which is basically where we talk about how ancient cultures viewed the sky. And the way they interacted with this technical same sky that we do. So I will be talking you guys through that. We're going to do a slight intro to understand what I'm talking about, and then I've got some stories for you guys. That's the fun part, so bear with me while we do this. So Sam, don't mind, thank you. So archaeoastronomy is the study of how ancient people understand the sky. It's not as complicated as it sounds, I promise. So yeah, it's just ancient monuments, archaeological alignments. When you build a temple that lines up with certain stars, that's archaeoastronomy. When you predict eclipses, that's archaeoastronomy. When you have ancient star lore, all of that counts as archaeoastronomy. So that is the field in which we will be talking about today. So the fun thing about constellations specifically is that it's entirely imaginary. A bunch of people look up at the sky and we're addicted to shiny things, so we look at all the shiny things and we draw invisible lines in between the shinies. And then the same way you look at clouds and you go, ooh, that one looks like a rhinoceros. Same vibe, except you look at the lines and you go, oh wow, that one looks like a dolphin. So that's basically how constellations happen. Every single one of them. It has no particular significance except the significance that you give it. So everyone, of course, is entitled to their own imagination. So we're fairly familiar with the Greek one if you've ever talked about your zodiac sign, or if you look up most constellations that we use here in the United States, you will generally be pointed in the direction of a Greek constellation. So those are probably the ones you're most familiar with. There are, of course, others that exist in every single civilization. There are Chinese constellations that number insanely in the 200s or something. It's an obscene number of constellations. How they remember them all, I will never know, but they have so many. Babylonian constellations are also a thing. There's plenty of Mesoamerican constellations. There are Egyptian constellations. Every single culture who views the sky views their own constellations. So that's a fun thing for us to note. The next important thing to understand is seasonal constellations. So, of course, we orbit the sun, and that means that our position in the sky changes. So as we move around the sun, our view of the constellations that we're able to see also changes. So we have constellations for each season. Right now we're in our fall season, so we have really cool October constellations up right now. But we just finished phasing out of our summer constellations, so we're just leaving those behind. We're heading into our winter constellations, and since our constellations generally talk about when the peak of the night is, you can still see some summer constellations if you're looking at it really early in the evening, and when you're looking really late in the evening, you can see some constellations that won't be up until the winter. So it's pretty cool. We get to see a big spectrum. So our October night sky. It is October. What I'm going to be talking about mostly is constellations that are available tonight or in general sometime right about now. So if you leave here and you go look at the sky, you might see some of these, and hopefully these stories will come to mind. But what we're seeing in our sky right now is constellations like Cephus and Cassiopeia, Cetus, Pegasus, and Andromeda. The ones that we're leaving behind, the ones that are fading away for us, are stuff like Agila and Lyra and Cygnus. Constellations that are rising for our winter ones are Pisces and Taurus and Orion. Wow. So, story time. This might be a lot of pointing. Would you mind if I swap places with you? It's a lot of clicking. So you just need to hear me. You don't need to see me. So this is fine anyway.
Okay.
Cool. So some of our up constellations right now included Perseus and Andromeda, so I'm going to tell you a story about Perseus and Andromeda. This is a fun one because the story is Greek, but the characters in the story are not. Almost every character in the story is Ethiopian except for one, so this is fun. I get to correct constellations. Everyone thinks that it's not like this, but it is. So, once upon a time, a long, long time ago in the kingdom of Ethiopia, so long ago that it was pronounced with an A. Do not ask, I have no idea. Ethiopia was run by these two. This is King Cephas and his wife, Queen Cassiopeia. Now, generally speaking, they do fine as rulers. They're okay. It's not a big deal. But we have one slight problem. Queen Cassiopeia is known as Cassiopeia the Vain. She's very into talking about herself, how cool she is, how awesome her kingdom is, how pretty she is. There's a lot of narcissism happening here, but no therapy, so there's nothing we can do. So it's kind of a problem, but the biggest brag that she has is that she tells everyone that her daughter, Princess Andromeda, is the most beautiful girl who's ever lived, ever. Now, I'm sure this is a brag that parents say about their children all the time. In a Greek story, bad plan. Do not do that. Because eventually it's going to make it to the ears of a god and they're going to be upset about it. So the god who's upset about it in this story is Poseidon. Poseidon is quite peeved. Because you see, he's married. And he believes that his wife is the most beautiful woman who's ever lived, ever. And obviously we can't have two. So the only solution to the problem is murder. So he goes up to the sky where his sea dragon Cetus lives, another constellation that should be up for you guys sometime tonight. And he goes to Cetus the sea dragon, tells him to come on down to Earth, swim over to Ethiopia, and drown the whole country and all the people in it. Because yeah, that's how you deal with your problems. It's just bad. And King Cephas realizes this is a problem, and he decides he's going to do something about it. So he goes to a local oracle and asks the oracle what he should do to save his kingdom from being drowned by a sea monster. And the oracle does some communing, and she talks to the gods, and when she comes out, she says, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to take your beautiful daughter, Princess Andromeda, you're going to tie her to a rock, and you're going to sacrifice her to the sea dragon. And this way the sea dragon will only eat your daughter and will not drown the whole country and all the people in it. Think they do it?
No.
They absolutely do it. They're terrible parents. So they take poor Princess Andromeda, who I will remind you has done nothing wrong in this story, and they tie her to a rock and she's going to get sacrificed to a sea dragon. Now, thankfully for poor Princess Andromeda, Perseus happens to be flying overhead and sees that she's about to get munched on. Now, if you're not aware of who Perseus is one of those half-god Greek heroes who runs around in all the Greek stories. Once again, Zeus has boinked something he's not supposed to, and Perseus is the result. So, Perseus got hit with one of those, hey kid, you like proving yourself moments, and he got sent to go defeat a gorgon named Medusa. This is pretty bad because most people who get sent to Medusa die. The reason being that Medusa has this really cool power where if you look her in the eyes, will turn to stone. So, usually an issue, but thankfully Perseus gets some divine intervention in the form of a magical shiny shield and flying shoes. Don't worry about the shoes too hard. But the shiny shield's important because he's able to look at Medusa's reflection instead of directly at her. And this allows him to not turn to stone, so he's able to chop off her head and he defeats the gorgon. Cool. Now, two things happen when he defeats the gorgon. First thing, he realizes that even though the head's not attached to her body anymore, it will still turn things to stone, which he thinks is useful, so for the rest of this story, he's carrying around Medusa's head, which is not creepy at all. Also, if you look at his constellation is also holding Medusa's head, so I guess he's doing that eternally? Anyway, second thing that happened is out of Medusa's neck stump pops Pegasus. Also his brother, Chrysaor, we're not going to talk about him, we're just focusing on Pegasus. So Pegasus pops out of her neck stump, and he is the divine winged horse whose a single clap of his hooves can collapse mountains or something. Very powerful winged horse is what we're looking at over here. So those are the two things that happen. Pegasus and Perseus fly off into the sunset together, probably to go tell people about how awesome they are. And of course, as they're doing the flying, this is when they see Princess Andromeda about to be eaten by the sea dragon. Now, Perseus, being a Greek hero, decides that he's going to do something about that, because we can't just leave the damsel in distress to get eaten by the sea monster. That's wrong. So he's going to rescue her. So he hops off of the magical horse, and he decides that he's going to 1v1 the giant sea dragon. And I don't know if you can tell by the tone of my voice, but he's not doing super well by himself. I don't know why he left the magical horse to do this solo, but he's not winning this fight. He's trying really hard. It's just not going very well. But that's cool, because Perseus isn't avoiding cheating. So he's totally fine if we cheat with the sea dragon. So he's about to lose a fight to the sea dragon, and that's when he decides to pull out Medusa's head. He shows the head to Cetus the sea dragon, who makes the mistake of looking into her eyes, and he turns to stone and sinks to the bottom of the ocean, where he cannot eat any princesses or drown any countries. So yay, we did it! We saved the day. Everything's fine. We don't have a sea dragon problem anymore. Perseus is now double famous because he also defeated a sea dragon on top of a gorgon, which is awesome. And him and Princess Andromeda fly off into the sunset together to go fall in love or something. Because you know what? If my parents tried to sacrifice me to a sea dragon, I would also leave with the first guy who says, hey, so this is great. They fly off, they fall in love, everything's great, and eventually they decide they're going to get married. Now, I don't know who's been to a wedding recently, but weddings are really awesome in the planning stage, and then when you actually do the execution, there's usually something that goes wrong. So the way this wedding works is everything's going fantastic until somebody comes up to Perseus in the middle of the wedding and goes, hey, I heard that you slayed a gorgon and then her head turns things to stone, but I don't think that's true. I think you're lying. And Perseus is like, nuh-uh, they absolutely turn stuff to stone. Here, look. And he shows the head to someone, and of course it turns that person and several other people to stone in the middle of his wedding. This also causes a fight, so he has to stab a few people, and that's a bummer, but it's fine. It's fine. You take the stabbed people, you put them in one corner, you take the statue people, and you put them in another corner, you pretend that didn't happen, and you continue with your wedding. So everything's fine, they got married, they lived happily ever for the rest of their lives, and that's it. That's the end of that story. So, not quite up, but I'm cheating because I can do that. We are going to talk about the Pleiades. So, I like talking about the Pleiades for you guys' exhibit specifically because A, look at that awesome star cluster. It's beautiful. But also, there's something really interesting that happens when you talk about Pleiades stories. The Pleiades is a really bright star cluster, so almost every civilization that exists in the northern hemisphere has a story about the Pleiades. It's very visible, it's really easy to see, it's just off of the constellation of Taurus, so generally pretty visible for most people. And the really interesting thing is that doing so much reading and studying and trying to figure out all the stories that are related to the Pleiades, everyone who's got a story about the Pleiades has a story that involves 7 something. Because when these stories were originally created, there were 7 visible stars in the Pleiades. Now, if you were to find the Pleiades tonight and try to look at it, you might see 4 stars, 5 on a really dark night with no clouds. But your visibility now is like 5 stars, and that's just the way that that is. And part of the reason for that is because when these stories were originally created thousands of years ago, there were actually 7 visible stars. But of course, our universe is ever expanding. So in the thousands of years that we started with these stories, the stars have moved further away, and now the cluster only looks like 5 stars to us. So I find it fascinating to look at these stories and think about a time when you could actually see all 7 stars perfectly clear. So there's so many Pleiades stories. Even when there aren't stories about the Pleiades is still used. So Inuits do not have a story about the Pleiades, but the Pleiades was a test for hunting. If you could see all 7 stars of the Pleiades, you could join the hunting party. Your eyesight was fine. If, like me, you needed glasses but didn't have them, and you could only see 3 Pleiades stars, you could not come with us. You were a liability. You were not going to hit anything today. Absolutely not. You can't come. So, even in places where it's not used for a story, it's still used for something, and I think that's so cool. So, we're going to get lost in some Pleiades stories. And we're going to start Greek, because why not? Get the easy one out of the way first. So, the Greek Pleiades stories is about the 7 daughters of Atlas. Now, Atlas is one of those titans that got punished after the Greek gods took over. His job is to hold up the heavens for the rest of his life. Sucks, but that's the story that we're going with. And he's got 7 daughters. Now, because his 7 daughters don't really have parents, don't know where mom is. Don't ask, I have no clue. But dad's holding up the heavens. So he's got these 7 wild daughters who just run around all the time. Worst possible thing in a Greek story, just a bunch of women with freedom. Anyway, so they run around just doing things, and eventually they become best friends with Artemis, goddess of the hunt. So they spend all their time in the woods, hunting deer and hanging out and generally having a really good time. Now one day they run into this dude. This is Orion. Orion is like a giant guy. I don't know what's going on with him, but he's really big and he's really good at hunting stuff. And he sees all 7 of the daughters of Atlas. Unfortunately, he's a creeper. So he's not in love with one of these 7 girls. He's in love with all 7 of these girls. And I use the word love loosely because he doesn't want to marry them. He wants to like kidnap them and keep them in his basement. It's very creepy. Now when he asks the 7 daughters of Atlas to marry him, every single one of them says no, which is a full sentence, but not for Orion. So he's not hearing it, and he continues to pursue the 7 daughters of Atlas until they get so tired of him, they go to their best friend Artemis, and they ask her to do something about him. Now, generally, I would think that the answer here is just shoot him. But, unfortunately, that's, for some reason, not an option. So, Artemis takes her 7 friends, and she turns them into 7 doves. This is not a problem for Artemis. She, as the goddess of the hunt, can talk to animals, so it's cool. They still get to be besties. Everything's fine. But hopefully as doves, they can fly away from Orion when he's being creepy. So this is supposed to be very helpful. Now, again, Artemis is fine with this. She's got her little dove friends. Everything is fine for about 4 seconds. Until we realize that Orion, A, is a creeper, and B, hunts things. So he has moved from wanting the 7 daughters of Atlas to be in his basement, and now he's going to shoot down all 7 doves and, I don't know, stuff them and put them on his mantle. I'm not 100% on what's happening here, but he's still going after the 7 doves is what's happening. So we've got a bigger problem than Artemis can solve. So she goes to her father Zeus, and she asks him to do something about this. So Zeus is generally not useful, but in this particular instance, he decides he's going to try. So his try is that he takes our 7 doves and he turns them into the 7 stars of the Pleiades. So now they're up in the sky, very far away from Orion, where they won't have to be bothered by him at any point, which is great. It's not a problem anymore. We're good. It is a slight problem, though, for Artemis. She was fine with her friends being doves. She is not fine with her friends being stars. She's lonely now. You can't talk to stars, at least not in a conversational kind of way. So she's really upset about this and decides that vengeance is the only way. So she gets this giant scorpion. Don't ask where she got the giant scorpion from. I have no clue. But she gets a giant scorpion to go over to Orion and stab him right in the heart. And of course he dies. Now, this is the part where Zeus stops being cool. He did such a good job in the story up till now, but it's about to get there. So, after Orion dies, Zeus thinks it would be so funny if he took Orion and put him in the sky. So if you ever see those 3 little dots that are the belt of Orion, Orion is one of our winter constellations. And I don't know how much we know about the geography of stars, but it's right next to the Pleiades. It's right there. They can see each other. So now, this creepy man is eternally following these girls around in the sky, and they did not ask for that, so that sucks. Artemis, though, being the cool, awesome bestie that she is, does take the scorpion and puts the scorpion in the sky as well, as the constellation Scorpio. Fun thing to know. Scorpio and Orion cannot be in the sky at the same time. Just isn't a thing that can happen. So every time you see Scorpio rising, that's when you see Orion falling. So he consistently runs from the Scorpion, which hopefully helps the Pleiades not get chased around by this dude for the rest of their life. So, yeah. That's the end of that story.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So was Orion Taurus?
Orion is next to Taurus.
Okay.
There is, it's a really distinct 3-star constellation that's usually called Orion's Belt. That is attached to the giant Orion constellation, which is right next to Taurus, which is where the Pleiades is. Because Zeus is a terrible person. Okay, South African Pleiades story. This one's a story about shame, mostly. Don't worry, it'll make sense, I promise. So, in this story, there's going to be a hunter and some zebras and a lion and a bunch of wives, and the wives are the Pleiades. So, if you're wondering where the Pleiades are in the story, it is going to be the wives. Don't worry, it'll make sense eventually. So, in this lovely South African story, we have a guy who has wives, multiples. I know you see one, imagine like 19. There's a bunch of wives. And one day, his wives tell him, hey, I'm going to need you to go out hunting. Meat is a thing that we require. And so he's going to leave. So his wives send him out to go find food. Now this entire story is happening in the sky, so our wives are the Pleiades. So fun. Now our husband is going to leave and go hunt. He is Aldebaran. Aldebaran is this really bright red star in the sky. Don't worry, I have this all on a slide so that you can see what all this looks like in the end. But he is Aldebaran. I promise it'll make sense in the end. So he heads out into the galaxy that looks like a brush. So there are an Andromeda galaxy and an Orion galaxy, and both of those, I guess if you look at it, kind of looks like grass just hanging out in the sky. So this is where he heads, to this pasture of the sky where he's hoping to find an animal that he can hunt. And what he finds are 3 zebras, which are the 3 stars on Orion's belt. And 3 zebras is fantastic. If we can kill one of those, that's great. So he is going to shoot one of these zebras. Now, unfortunately, as he's just about to throw his spear, that's when he notices a lion. The lion in the story is Betelgeuse. I promise that's actually the way that you say it. So there is a star called Betelgeuse. It is in the way of him and his lions, and he notices it at the very last second, also trying to hunt these zebras. Now, he sees the lion and gets scared. So instead of a real good aim thing, he misses these zebras. And he only brought the 1 spear. So he's got to go retrieve the spear in order to hunt the zebras, but you'd also have to go out and possibly get eaten by a lion. And he doesn't want to do that. So he can't go get the spear, but he also can't go home without meat. And he decides that the shame of having failed this task is so great that he's just going to live where he is in the sky for the rest of his life. He's not going back to his wives. He is not going to hear the disappointment. He's just going to stay there forever. And what this looks like in the sky, we have our Pleiades over in Taurus. So those are his wives waiting for him to maybe come home. Aldebaran is also in Taurus. It's our bright star right there, the little red one. Betelgeuse is over in Orion in the far corner, and then the Orion's belt is those 3 stars right over there. So this is our setting. Our wives, husband, a bunch of zebras, and a lion. And his spear is probably one of the stars. Oh, sorry, his spear is regal. Sorry. So yeah, if you look down at the bottom of Orion, that's where his spear is. He could go get it, but you've got to go past Betelgeuse for that. He's not going to do that. So yeah, he just stays there forever, never never goes home. And that's it. That's the end of that story. Okay, so we're gonna do an Australian Pleiades stories next. This one might be a little bit confusing. There are two different versions of the story. I am not sure which one's the right one, so I've got both. So the first version of the story is that the Pleiades represents 7 huntresses. So I know you see 3, pretend you see 7. There are 7 huntresses. They are really, really good at hunting, and they are in the Australian outback hunting kangaroos. And apparently kangaroos, really difficult to catch. I have no idea, I've never seen a kangaroo in real life, but apparently hunting kangaroos is really hard. So they catch a kangaroo, and they're gonna eat the kangaroo. Now, as they're sitting down to roast their kangaroo, a lone hunter appears, and he did not have a great day hunting. So he asks if he can join them for some food, and they agree. So he sits with them, and he eats with them, and they have a pretty good time. And at some point during the day, he decides that the youngest of the 7 daughters is really cute, and he'd like to be married to her. But asking is scary, so he's not going to do that. Instead, he's just going to wait and pine and see what happens. So at the end of the night, everyone goes to sleep, and this man has dreams about falling in love with this beautiful girl, and maybe she'll say yes, and they'll be married and so happy, and everything will be great, but only ever in his dreams. And he decides, I'm gonna make this a reality with plotting. So he takes the boomerang of the youngest sister, and he hides it in the tall grass, and waits for the morning to happen. So when all the girls wake up in the morning, they are ready to go, and the youngest sister cannot find her boomerang. So she goes off to search for it. The guy pretends to leave and waits for the little sister to be separated from her other sisters, and then attempts a kidnapping. Because yeah, that's how you get married. It's totally not a problem at all. Unfortunately for him, he forgot that these are 7 huntresses, and our little sister chooses violence and completely ends this man. Now, her sisters, when they saw her about to be kidnapped, decided that escaping into the sky was the way to go. So they flew up into the sky and are the stars of the Pleiades. The sister follows after she's murdered the very annoying man. And this is supposed to be the explanation for why one of the stars of the Pleiades is always a little bit further away than the rest of the cluster. So yeah, that's how that one goes. So we've got one little star that's a little bit further away than everybody else. That is the youngest sister. Everybody else is in the cluster. Now the alternative version of the story also has 7 girls in it, but they're not huntresses, and don't worry, there's no creepy guy. We got through the worst story first. So this brings in a part of Aboriginal Australian culture called the dreaming. So the dreaming is a world where the world was created. It's not where Earth is. It is entirely separate. It is fully spiritual, but it is where all of the unexplained things on our planet come from, apparently. So that's really cool. So we got the real world, and we've got the dreaming world. And in the dreaming world, they have fire. In the real world, we do not yet. So, in the dreaming world, all food is cooked and everything is delicious and wonderful, and we love it so much. And in the real world, we have lots of different types of animals that would be delicious food if you could cook them, but you can't. So, there's a little bit going on here. And there are 7 sisters. Now, these 7 sisters from the dreaming all come in to the real world occasionally just for funsies. They think it's cool to go hang out and look at the emus and follow the kangaroos around. And every time they show up in the real world, they come with fire sticks because eating raw kangaroo is not on the list for them. So they have fire sticks so that they can cook all of the food, but they do not share this fire with any of the other people and animals that exist in the real world. Now, one such animal who thinks that sucks is the crow. At the time, the crow is colorful, almost rainbow colored. And he asks the girls every time he sees them if they would pretty please share fire, and they say no every single time. And one time he decides he's tired of listening to that, so he steals it. Crows are really good at that. So he steals one of the fire sticks from the girls, and the rest of the girls disappear. They go back to the dreaming, and they never come back again because they've lost fire. Now the crow, once he has fire, is super happy because now he can make food, everything's awesome, but unfortunately for him, all of the other animals and people also would love some fire. And they come to him every 10 seconds like, hey, I killed this, could you cook it? Hey, I killed this, could you cook it? Hey, I killed this, can I just borrow the fire stick? So, Crow spends so much time keeping this fire away from everyone else that it singes all of his feathers until he's entirely soot covered, which is why crows are fully black. He does eventually lose the fire. Can't remember who stole it from him. It was either an emu or a kangaroo, but someone steals it, starts a bushfire, and this is how fire ends up with everyone else. So, we get fire, and we get crows. And that's it. That's the end of that story.
Nice.
Okay. And I think we got one more Pleiades story. Hang on, how much time do I have left? Okay, I'm doing good. We got this. We got this. Last one. This is a Kiowa Native American story. So Kiowa Native Americans generally lived in the Great Plains areas of the United States. So think up north where it's flat land. So in this story, there are 7 Kiowa girls. Again, I know you see 3. Please imagine 7. So our 7 girls are on a migration with their tribe. Their tribe is moving from one spot to another spot. This happens every year. It's not a big deal. We're just moving an entire group of people. Sounds insane, but they're doing it just fine. And at some point, they decide that they're going to rest near this river. So while their families are resting and everybody's setting up, these girls decide that they're going to walk off down the river and just go hang out. Just for funsies. We're going to splash in the river. We're going to take a second, chill out. It's going to be great. And they wander a bit far away from their family. And when they've wandered a bit too far, this is where they see off in the distance a bear. Usually that's not a big deal. We see a bear, we walk in the other direction, it's fine. This particular bear, though, has decided that it's going to choose violence. So it sees these 7 girls, identifies them immediately as food, and he charges at them, and he is 100% going to eat them. So our girls, as any sane person would, run away from the bear. Unfortunately, the bear is chasing them in the opposite direction of their families. So as they run, they get further and further away from their families. Now, I don't know how much we know about bear speed versus person speed, but bears are faster. So the bear is gaining on these 7 girls. One of them happens to be the daughter of a priest and knows a little bit more than the other girls about praying to the gods. So, as they're being chased by this really angry bear, she prays to the Sky Father and asks him to pretty please do something to save them from this bear. Thankfully for her, he hears her and he tells the girl to go stand on the nearest rock. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever been chased by a bear before, but this is horrifying instructions to receive if you're running away from a bear. So, weird instructions, but the girls decide they are going to trust in the Sky Father, and they decide to sit on the nearest rock. And just as the bear is about to show up and absolutely eat them, the Sky Father pulls the rock into the sky and creates this rock. This is the Devil's Tower, or Bear's Lodge, as the Kiowa originally called it. So, this stone structure exists in real life. You can literally go see it. It's pretty cool. So, they're at the top of this rock. We're good, right? The bear's all the way at the bottom. We're all the way at the top. Not a problem. Turns out the angry bear is magic. So, angry bear gets really big and starts raking his claws down the side of the mountain, which is where the mountain gets all those ridges from. So, he's not quite at the top yet, but he's getting there, and our 7 girls are doing their best to throw sticks and rocks and deter this giant bear from eating them, and it's not going very well. So we pray to the Sky Father one more time, and we ask him to pretty please do something about this bear. Now, once again, we get crazy instructions. So the Sky Father talks to these 7 girls and says, hey, jump off the rock. Again, horrifying instruction.
Right.
But once again, we're going to trust the Sky Father. It worked the first time. We're going to try it the second time. This is going to be fine. So they jump off the rock close to the bear, and it's fine because the Sky Father grabs each of the girls individually and pulls them up into the sky, where they turn into the 7 stars.
Oh, nice.
And that's it. That's the end of that story too.
Wow.
And that's all the stories that I've got, but I am open to questions if you guys have any. Yes, please.
All right, mine's not a question, it's just a statement. You're a marvelous storyteller.
Thank you very much.
It's just been really entertaining. You do a really
appreciate
great
it.
job. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what is the theory that allows us to understand all these stories are so similar amongst so many different civilizations?
So for the Pleiades specifically, I think the reason why they're all so similar is just because of the way that the Pleiades looks. So globular star cluster, it's millions of stars in actuality, but we only see 7 really bright ones, 4 now. But at the time we saw 7 really bright ones. And I think there's something significant in the number 7 for certain cultures. So when you see 7, you come up with a really cool story about 7 things. And really interesting thing about constellations as well is that if you have a story that predates the constellation, you can just attach it to that. So if you had a story about 7 something before you saw the star cluster, the Pleiades, and then you see it and you're like, ha 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 ha, we can attach this story to that. You change it a little bit to explain why it's up in the sky for some reason now, but you still end up with the same story of 7 something. So for the Pleiades specifically, that's usually something that works. There is a really strange one though. I'll actually go back a little bit just so that you guys can see how insane this is. Taurus. So Taurus is our star cluster that generally looks like a bull in our Greek constellations. Now, I don't know about you guys. I don't see a bull. I don't see it at all. I don't get it. I see the 2 lines, and sure, that could be horns. It could also be a lot of other things. It could be legs. It could be literally anything else. But Taurus apparently has consistently been seen as a bull in several different cultures. So in Babylonian constellations, it is a bull. In Greek constellations, it is a bull. In Egyptian constellations, bull. In cave paintings, bull. So it's been a bull for hundreds of thousands of years. I cannot understand why. I don't know what the significance is, but yeah, that's one that also gets seen as a bull fairly consistently. There are some stars that are just super bright and will be seen as constellations regardless of where you are. Orion's belt is a really good example. So the entirety of the constellation, no, but those 3 stars in the belt show up in several other cultures as well. So yeah, some of them are just real bright.
Interesting. Awesome.
Yes.
I have a question about timing. So, I never really considered that other cultures have their own interpretation of the constellations and everything else. But it seems to me like there was some period of time where looking at the stars was creating stories. When did that stop?
That's a really good question. Stop is a...
Because we're not creating those stories now.
We're definitely not. You make an excellent point. So I think there's a time in each civilization before, so I will say this is very likely going to be something that happens before we start doing things like cultural drift. So once you start having civilizations that are close enough to each other and open enough to speaking to each other that you start sharing information like this, that's when you start seeing stories where they share elements or something in that vein. But when you're by yourself, or at least you assume you're by yourself, you're the only civilization that exists, it's just you guys in the world, and you're creating everything for the first time, I think that's where a lot of our star stories come from. So as soon as we settle into civilizations and every waking second isn't about figuring out where food's gonna come from, that's where you get stuff where you start seeing star stories. And there is a theory that humans in general come in 2 groups, the ones who are awake in the morning and the ones who are awake at night. I'm one of the night ones. So me and the rest of my night brethren were probably awake at night trying to make sure that everybody else is safe and that there's no weird things getting into camp or whatever it is we're saving everybody from. And we would have been looking at all of these stars and coming up with some of these stories. So yeah, I believe that it probably stopped sometime around when we stopped thinking we were the only ones discovering this and we were the only ones coming up with these stories. When we start hearing other people's stories, it becomes mundane, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, on this topic, I'm imagining that what we think are, well, our stories today are 14 billion years ago we had a big bang and we had stardust who came and formed us all. Those that we consider this to be science,
Yes.
but they also may be just stories because we really don't know. We really don't know, and perhaps in the future they'll look back and say, well, there was a tribe, you know, that felt like they emerged from a big bang.
Yeah.
But what they didn't know was that blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe those will be the stories of future.
You make an excellent point. So this is not related to stars necessarily, but to mythology in specific. One thing that does happen with mythology is the point of mythology is generally to explain something that we don't understand. And that changes as we move forward in time. So if you don't understand why plants grow, right, then the answer becomes, well, there's a god of plants, and they throw lightning into the ground, and then plants grow. And that's why plants grow right after the rainy season when we have thunder. And that makes sense to you at the time. That is your version of science. And I think that's really interesting to think about specifically with eclipses. I have a class I teach about eclipses and the way that people in ancient cultures responded to eclipses. And as far as the scientific theory is for them, there's a Mayan tradition of thinking that the sun is being eaten by something. So you don't necessarily know that it's the moon. It could be a jaguar. It could be a giant ant. It's something. Something is trying to eat the sun. And your job as a citizen is to make really loud noises and to throw things at the sky so that whatever's eating the sun will leave and not do that. And if you do that every single time there's an eclipse, and the moon leaves and the sun comes out at the end, as far as you're concerned, you just saved the sun. One of those spears hit the thing and you did the science. So I think that's a really good point. In ancient mythology, a lot of which does end up in our star lore, we are trying to answer questions to things that we don't have the answer to. And it seems different to us now because of the way that we view science and the things that we've gotten answers for. Now we're less curious about how plants grow. We know, but we still don't know how the universe started. So we've got a story about that. We're just going to let that go until we find out something different one day.
Thank you.
Of course. Anybody else?
Thanks, that was very nice.
You're very welcome.
Wait, so
Yeah.
as you get, well, what comes first? Like, so as you get informed about the science, does the lore change to fit? Who's creating, like, I know these different cultures are creating these stories, but it seems like these stories are the same for centuries. Like, what about the Star Wars myth, right?
Sure.
Um,
So, and I'm clarifying just to understand. So
Yeah.
we're asking, when do the stories change? Do stories evolve as we gain additional information?
yeah,
Yes. The answer to that question is yes, it does.
yeah.
And so when I tell these stories, I like to find the version that I believe is the most authentic. So I go back as far as I possibly can. But a really good example for gaining new information and changing perspectives on stories is actually the Perseus story when we talked about Medusa. So Medusa originally, and the way that I tell it, she's one of 3 Gorgon sisters. They are all just born like that, and the one specifically can turn things to stone. And that's just the way that her story works, right? But as we move forward in the world, the perspective on her changes. So this background story for Medusa is that she was assaulted in a temple by someone, Poseidon or Zeus or one of the gods. And she was punished by Athena, I think it was Athena's temple, she was punished by Athena to look at people and turn them to stone. That is a change in the story. The original is that she's a Gorgon sister. At some point, something in the narrative or something new gets learned, and we add in the part where she's punished, and that's how we turn people to stone. As that story moves even further, now in modern retellings of this story, if you hear a modern retelling of the story about Medusa, so please keep a lookout for this, there is a twist on that story that she was assaulted in a temple, and Athena gave her the ability to turn people into stone as a way to save her from ever having to deal with awful men again. Because the way that we change in society and the way that we view things changes throughout the world. So that's 3 different iterations of this one story. All changes are made based on how we change and view things throughout the world. So absolutely yes, as we move forward and learn new things and adapt to new things and new social constructs, those do change these stories. You can still technically find the originals in some cases, if you try really hard. But sometimes those are lost, and sometimes the only thing that we have left is the distorted version of the story that involves all of the change that's been applied over the years. So, yeah.
Okay, so what would be a current story
Yep.
Yeah.
myth for today?
Oh. Okay.
So like I've heard that there's a perspective on Trump being a trickster, right? Coming in, demolishing, devastating, what norms we've held dear.
Okay.
How would we interpret today in story form?
That's a really deep question. So the example that you gave made me think of something that's as close to modern as my brain can get. So
Yeah.
there is an Ojibwe Native American story about a Wendigo. Have we heard of a Wendigo before? Okay, I'm seeing some shakes and some nods, so a Wendigo is either a spirit or a being. In Ojibwe mythology, the way that it works is if you didn't prepare well enough for winter, and you don't have enough food stored or whatever, and you're starving and you resort to cannibalism, that you will turn into a Wendigo. And Wendigos are these creatures that grow bigger every time they eat a person. Like their bones get bigger, but their skin doesn't. So you're like this large skeleton inside of this very small skin, stretched eternally, constantly hungry, always freezing, tall enough to be trees. And the idea is that you're the embodiment of greed, that there is greed associated with not preparing well for the winter. And when that story moved forward in time and we get to colonization of the United States, Ojibwe people originally saw people who settled in the United States as Wendigos, because the greed of taking land consistently even though you don't need it, taking things even though you don't need them, hunting things even though you're not going to eat them, the greed that's associated with that made them think Wendigo. And the appropriate response to a Wendigo is to burn it, so that happened a little bit. And it went on for so long that there was a psychological term coined for it in like the early 1780 something, I want to say. There was a coin termed, called Wendigo psychosis, where Native American people would be arrested for believing that white people were Wendigos and trying to kill them. And then you end up in a psych ward for forever. So yeah, that's a thing. So yeah, that's a myth that moves its way into modern things that we hold on to. But those, I think, the reason why it's such a complicated question for me is because the myth would only be a thing if you had a previous culture to move that myth forward with.
Right.
So, and that culture changes depending on who we're talking about. So Native American people could have a myth that they've moved forward all the way to now, and that sticks with them in modern times. But it would be entirely different from someone who was German and came over to the United States and moves a myth forward in the US from there. So, and I'm not sure what a really good example of that one would be. The Wendigo psychosis one is the only one I can think of that hits in modern times, kind of.
Right.
There's a project in Hawaii, there's a mountain there where they're some of the largest telescopes in the world, and one of them is being stopped
Mm-hmm,
by the local indigenous Hawaiians.
yep,
So they're not buying into the science that's coming out of this, so they must have some strong feelings about their land, their myths about this site.
oh yeah, and that's definitely a thing that you see in some cultures where they will maintain certain things that are kind of mythological. Oh, you got it, no, you're fine, you got it. Just didn't want you to fall, you made it. So yeah, things that make it from something mythological into current stuff is definitely stuff like thinking certain mountains are sacred. There are definitely people, Mount Everest is a really good example. There are a lot of people who climb Mount Everest, but there's also a lot of people who are local that would really prefer that you didn't, because the mountain's kind of sacred and they would prefer that you not mess with it. And there's even smaller things. If you go to some places in Ireland and Scotland, they have fairy circles, which is just where mushrooms grow in a little circle. But there's mythology associated with that, and they still won't pave over fairy circles. They will go around them because you're not supposed to disturb the fairy circle. So there's definitely a bunch of stuff like that that does kind of make it into modern stuff, which is pretty cool. A really good example of mythology that we keep, thank you for bringing me in this vein, I just remembered, we believe in the tooth fairy, and also Santa Claus. Honestly, any weird holiday thing that's associated that you don't have a really good explanation for, the Easter Bunny, all of that is a mythology that made its way into modern times. We don't necessarily believe that it's real, but we do still celebrate it, you know? Right. So it's fun now, as opposed to being something that's serious and is an integral part of your life. Now it's just like, oh, this is a thing that we do. When the summer solstice hits, it's probably fun to go outside and collect Easter eggs. That sounds like a great day. So yeah, we do stuff like that now. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up about the Taurus?
Please.
You said that 2 or 3 different cultures see it as a bull.
Yup.
And presumably these, like, the wisdom would be that these cultures were not in contact.
Nope.
And there's no suggestion that there was any cross-pollination in these.
Only for 2 of them. So Babylon and Greece are the only ones where we've kind of got a cross-pollination type vibe. Babylon predates Greece. And one thing that new civilizations will do is if there's something cool in their general vicinity that's from a previous culture, they'll go, we did that, and pretend that it's theirs. It absolutely is someone else's. They just won't admit to that. So Babylonian constellations, I think all of our zodiac signs are Babylonian constellations. They don't all look exactly the same. Pisces looks a little bit different than the original Babylonian constellation did, but all 12 of them are Babylonian constellations that Greece borrowed and then renames as the names that we're familiar with today, but they have the exact same imagery. So Taurus is still a bull, it's just a different name on a bull. Pisces is still a water-related thing, it's just got fish in it now. I don't think it had fish originally. The reason why, is it Sagittarius? I think the reason is, Capricorn. The reason Capricorn is a fish goat is because Babylon has a story about a fish goat. Greece doesn't. Greece didn't even come up with a story about the fish goat. We just have one, we called it Capricorn, and we pretended that that was fine. So that's the only one where it's a cross-related thing. Everybody else comes up with the thing independently, which is kind of insane, but yeah, that's the way that we do that one.
Well, thanks everybody for coming, thank you very much, Alan, that was awesome.
You're so welcome.
Wow.
This was great.
I'm Jean Sherry, President of the Board of Directors. I want to say I was out stargazing last night, and I looked up and I thought, oh my God, I'm so small, and I kind of got teary. It's like, just like, oh my God, look at this. And then I thought, isn't it amazing that people at one point in time looked up at the sky and thought and decided their gods were up there. And made all these stories about their gods. I have a much deeper understanding about how it all works now. Thank you very much.
Welcome. This is great.
So thanks everybody for coming. Art House offers contemporary art exhibits addressing topics of current import, speakers, camps, and workshops. Our exhibits and speaking events are free and open to the public. We encourage you to become a member if you are not already. Information is out on the table out there. Or if you've enjoyed tonight's speaker and our food and drink, please just drop some cash in the box or do the tip top. Thanks very much.
Awesome.
And don't forget, we have a speaker next week, and our next exhibit coming up is called Along the River's Way. Did you mention this tonight?
I haven't shared about it.
You want to say something?
We can, so next month, we have 11 artists we've filmed in the valley. They're creatives who've been practicing their craft for a long time, and we're celebrating them. However, this exhibition we're gonna have is multimedia, so it's much more experimental. It's gonna be sound, it's gonna be projections, there's gonna be art. So it's again similar to this vein where it's this immersion into technology, architecture, visual arts, and science. It's again multi-layered, the next show as well. So please come. If you're a resident of the valley, you probably will recognize many of the artists, so. Join.
Thank you, Amma, thank you.
You're
I
so
think
welcome. You
uh,
guys are awesome. Thank you.
Awesome presentation, thank you.